Hey everybody, I am Ron Cantor, the director of Messiah's Mandate, president of Shalano TV, and I'm going to read something to you. It's long, it's graphic, it's difficult. The New York Times recently did a piece, and it's called Screams Without Words, How Hamas Weaponized Sexual Violence on October the 7th. It's a long article. I'm going to read the whole thing, and the reason I'm doing that is because Hamas, in an official dispatch, has said that this is all lies, that no women were raped. By the way, even if nobody was raped on October 7th, they mowed down hundreds of partygoers with machine guns. But there was rape. I was one of the few people who've seen the footage. I went to Jerusalem. I saw what they did, and I saw how happy they were about it. So without any further ado, I'm going to read this, and I hope that you will endure it. It is gut-wrenching, it is difficult, and it's very graphic. I'm going to use words that I would not normally use, so I'm warning you. But listen, it took a long time before people began to deny the Holocaust. Already, we're not even 3 months separated from October 7th, and people are saying that the things that Hamas videotaped themselves doing did not happen, despite all the evidence that we have. So we have to get the record out there. Here we go. At first, she was known simply as the woman in the black dress. In a grainy video, you can see her lying on her back, dress torn, legs spread, vagina exposed. Her face is burned beyond recognition, and her right hand covers her eyes. The video was shot in the early hours of October 8th by a woman searching for a missing friend at the site of the rave in southern Israel, where, the day before, Hamas terrorists massacred hundreds of Israeli young people. The video went viral with thousands of people responding, desperate to know if the woman in the black dress was their missing friend, sister, or daughter. One family knew exactly who she was, Gal Abdush, mother of two from a working-class town in central Israel, who disappeared from the rave that night with her husband. As the terrorists closed in on her, trapped on a highway in a line of cars of people trying to flee the party, she sent one final WhatsApp message to her family: "You don't understand." Based largely on evidence, video evidence, which was verified by the New York Times, Israeli police officials said they believe that Ms. Abdush was raped, and she has become a symbol of the horrors visited upon Israeli women and girls during the October 7th attacks. Israeli officials say that everywhere Hamas terrorists struck, the rave, the military bases along the Gaza border, and the kibbutzim, they brutalized women. A 2-month investigation by the Times uncovered painful new details establishing that the attacks against women were not isolated events, but part of a broader pattern of gender-based violence. On October 7th, relying on video footage, photographs, GPS data from mobile phones, and interviews with more than 150 people, including witnesses, medical personnel, soldiers, and rape counselors, the Times identified at least 7 locations where Israeli women and girls appear to have been sexually assaulted or mutilated. 4 witnesses described in graphic detail seeing women raped and killed at 2 different places along Route 232, a road, by the way, that I drive all the time. The same highway where Mrs. Abdush's half-naked body was found sprawled on the road at a 3rd location. And the Times interviewed several soldiers and volunteer medics who together described finding more than 30 bodies of women and girls. Let me just say that again. 30 bodies of women and girls in and around the rave site, and in the 2 kibbutzim in a similar state as Ms. Abdush. Legs spread, clothes torn off, signs of abuse in their genital areas. Many of the counts are difficult to bear, and the visual evidence is disturbing to see. The Times viewed photographs of one woman's corpse that emergency responders discovered in the rubble of a besieged kibbutz with dozens of nails driven into her thighs and groin. Again, I want to be clear. The Times reporters viewed these pictures. There is no ambiguity here. The Times also viewed a video provided by the Israeli military showing 2 dead Israeli soldiers at a base near Gaza who appear to have been shot directly in their vaginas. Hamas has denied Israel's accusations of sexual violence. Israeli activists have been outraged that the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the agency's UN Women did not acknowledge the many accusations until weeks after the attacks. Investigators with Israel's top national police unit, Lahav 433, have been steadily gathering evidence, but they have not put a number on how many women were raped, saying that most are dead and buried, and that they will never know. No survivors have spoken publicly. The Israeli police have acknowledged that during the shock and confusion of October 7th, the deadliest day in Israeli history, they were not focused on collecting semen samples from women's bodies, requesting autopsies, or closely examining crime scenes. At the moment, the authorities said they were intent on repelling Hamas and identifying the dead. A combination of chaos, enormous grief, and Jewish religious duties meant that many bodies were buried as quickly as possible. Most were never examined, and in some cases, like at the rave scene, where there were more than 360 people who were slaughtered in a few hours, the bodies were hauled away by the truckload. That has left the Israeli authorities at a loss to fully explain to families what happened to their loved ones in the final moments. Ms. Abdush's relatives, for example, never received a death certificate. They're still searching for answers. In cases of widespread sexual violence during a war, it is not unusual to have limited forensic evidence, experts said. Armed conflict is so chaotic, said Adil Haque, a Rutgers law professor and war crimes expert. People are more focused on their safety than on building a criminal case down the road. Very often, he said, sex crime cases will be prosecuted years later on the basis of testimony from victims and witnesses. The eyewitnesses might not even know the name of the victim, he added, but if they can testify as, quote, I saw a woman being raped by this armed group, this can be enough. Screams without words. Sapir, a 24-year-old accountant, has become one of the Israeli police's key witnesses. She does not want to be fully identified, saying that she would be hounded for the rest of her life if her name were revealed, her last name. She attended the rave with several of her friends and provided investigators with graphic testimony. She spoke to the Times in a 2-hour interview outside of a cafe in southern Israel, where she recounted seeing groups of heavily armed gunmen rape and kill at least 5 women. She said that at 8 a.m. on October 7th, she was hiding under the low branches of a bushy tamaris tree just off Route 232, about 4 miles southwest of the party. She had been shot in the back. She felt faint. She covered herself in dry grass and laid as still as she could. About 15 meters from her hiding place, she said, she saw motorcycles, cars, and trucks pulling up. She said that she saw about 100 men, most of them dressed in military fatigues and combat boots, a few in dark sweatsuits getting in and out of vehicles. She said the men congregated along the road and passed between them assault rifles, grenades, and small missiles, and badly wounded women. It was like an assembly point, she said. The first victim, she said, she saw was a young woman with copper-colored hair, blood running down her back, pants pushed down to her knees. One man pulled her by the hair and made her bend over. Another penetrated her, Sapir said, and every time she flinched, he plunged a knife into her back. She said She then watched another woman, quote, shredded into pieces. While one terrorist raped her, she said, another pulled out a box cutter and sliced off her breast. One continues to rape her, and the other throws her breast to someone else, and they play with it, throw it, and it falls on the road, Sapir said. She said the men sliced her face, then the woman fell out of view. Around the same time, she said, she saw 3 other women raped and terrorists carrying the severed heads of 3 more women. Sapir provided photographs of her hiding place and her wounds, and police officials have stood by her testimony and released a video of her with blurred face recounting some of what she saw. Yura Karol, a 22-year-old security consultant, said he was hiding in the same spot, and he can be seen in one of Sapir's photos. He and Sapir were part of a group of friends who had met up at the party. In an interview, Mr. Karol said he barely lifted his head to look at the road, but he also described seeing a woman raped and killed. Since that day, Sapir said, she has struggled with a painful rash that spreads across her torso, and she can barely sleep, waking up at night, heart pounding, covered in sweat. That day, I became an animal, she said. I was emotionally detached, sharp, just the adrenaline of survival. I looked at all this as I was photographing them with my eyes, not forgetting any detail. I told myself I should remember everything. That same morning along Route 232, but in a different location about a mile southwest of the party area, Raz Cohen, a young Israeli who had attended the rave and had worked recently in the Democratic Republic of Congo, training Congolese soldiers, said that he was hiding in a dried up steam bed. It provided some cover from the assailants, combing the area and shooting anyone they found, he said in an hour-and-a-half interview in a Tel Aviv restaurant. Maybe 40 yards in front of him, he recalled, a white van pulled up and its doors flew open. He said he then saw 5 men wearing civilian clothes, all carrying knives, and one carrying a hammer. Dragging a woman across the ground. She was young, naked, and screaming. They all gather around her, Mr. Cohen said. She's standing up. They start raping her. I saw the men standing in a half circle around her. One penetrates her. She screams. I still remember her voice. Screams without words. Then one of the men raises a knife, he said, and they just slaughter her. Shoam Guta, one of Mr. Cohen's friends and a fashion designer, said the 2 of them were hiding together in the steam bed. He said he saw at least 4 men step out of the van and attack the woman, who ended up between their legs. He said that they were talking, giggling, and shouting. And let me just say that the video that I saw, the 45 minutes of video that I saw from the Hamas footage, corroborates that. They were giddy. They were happy. It was the greatest day of their lives. He said they were talking, giggling, and shouting, and that one of them stabbed her with a knife repeatedly, literally butchering her. Hours later, the first wave of volunteer emergency medical technicians arrived at the rave site. In interviews, 4 of them said that they discovered the bodies of dead women with their legs spread, underwear missing. Some with their hands tied by rope in zip ties. In the party area, along the road, in the parking area, in the open field around the rave site. Jamal Waraki, a volunteer medic with the nonprofit Zaka Emergency Response Team, said that he could not get out of his head a young woman in a rawhide vest being between the main stage and the bar. Her hands were tied behind her back, he said. She was bent over, half naked, her underwear rolled down between her knees. Yinon Rivlin, a member of the Rave's production team, who lost 2 brothers in the attack, said after the hiding from the killers, he emerged from a ditch, made his way to the parking area east of the party along Route 232, looking for survivors. Near the highway, he said, he found the body of a young woman on her stomach, no pants or underwear, legs spread apart. He said her vagina area appeared to have been sliced open, as if someone tore her apart. Similar discoveries were made in 2 kibbutzim, Be'eri and Kfar Aza. 8 volunteer medics and 2 Israeli soldiers told the Times that in at least 6 different houses, they had come across a total of at least 24 bodies of women and girls. Again, when they say women and girls, they're saying teenagers or younger. Girls. They came upon 24 bodies of women and girls, naked or half naked, some mutilated, others tied up, and often alone. A paramedic in an Israeli commando unit said that he had found the bodies of 2 teenage girls in a room at Be'eri. One was lying on her side, he said, boxer shorts ripped, bruises by her groin. The other was sprawled on the floor face down, he said, pajama pants pulled to her knees, bottom exposed, semen smeared on her back. Because his job was to look for survivors, he said he kept moving and did not document the scene. Neighbors of the 2 girls killed, who were sisters 13 and 16, said that their bodies had been found alone, separated from the rest of the family, for obvious reasons. The Israeli military allowed the paramedic to speak with reporters on the condition that he not be identified because he serves in an elite unit. Many of the dead were brought to the Shura military base in central Israel for identification. Here, 2 witnesses said they saw signs of sexual violence. Shari Mendez, an architect called up as a reserve soldier to help prepare the bodies of female soldiers for burial, said that she had seen 4 with signs of sexual violence, including some with a lot of blood in the pelvic area. A dentist, Captain Mayan, who worked at the same identification center, said that she had seen at least 10 bodies of female soldiers from Gaza observation posts with signs of sexual violence. Captain Mayan asked to be identified only by her rank and her surname because of the sensitivity of the subject. She said that she had seen several bodies with cuts in their vaginas and underwear soaked in blood, and one whose fingernails had been pulled out. The Israeli authorities have no shortage of video evidence from the October 7th attacks. They have gathered hours of footage from Hamas body cams, dash cams, security cameras, and mobile phones showing Hamas terrorists killing civilians and many images of mutilated bodies. But Moshe Finzi, a deputy superintendent and senior spokesman of Israel's National Police, said, "We have 0 autopsies, 0, making a O with his right hand." In the aftermath of the attack, police officials said forensic examiners were dispatched to the Shura military base to help identify the hundreds of bodies. Israeli officials say around 1,200 people were killed that day. The examiners worked quickly to give the agonized families of the missing a sense of closure and determine by a process of elimination who was dead and who was being held hostage in Gaza. According to Jewish tradition, funerals are held promptly. The result was that many bodies with signs of sexual abuse were put to rest without medical examinations, meaning that potential evidence now lies buried in the grounds. International forensic experts say that it would be possible to recover some evidence from the corpses, but it would be difficult. Mr. Finzi said that Israeli security forces were still finding imagery that shows women were brutalized, sitting at their desk at the imposing police building in Jerusalem. He swiped open his phone, tapped, and produced the video of 2 soldiers that were shot in the vagina, which he said was recorded by Hamas gunmen recently recovered by Israeli soldiers. A colleague sitting next to him, Merit Ben Meir, A police chief superintendent said that she believed that the brutality against women was a combination of two ferocious forces, the hatred of Jews and the hatred for women. And let me just pause here and say that I think it was also more than that. I think it was the fact that they were on drugs. They were drugged up as they came in. And in addition to that, when you begin to murder people in cold blood, you invite the demonic into your soul. I don't know if they plan to do these types of acts of violence, or that the more that they killed, the more demonic the assault came and they simply couldn't control themselves. Some emergency medical workers now wish they had documented more of what they saw. In interviews, they said they had moved bodies, cut off zip ties, and cleaned up scenes of carnage, trying to be respectful to the dead, and they inadvertently destroyed evidence. Many volunteers working for Zaka, the emergency response team, are religious Jews that operate under strict rules that command deep respect for the dead. I did not take pictures because we're not allowed to take pictures, said Yossi Landau, a Zaka volunteer. In retrospect, I regret it. There are at least 3 women and 1 man who were sexually assaulted and survived, according to Gil Cholev, a spokesman for Israel's Military of Welfare and Social Affairs. None of them has been willing to come physically for treatment, he said. 2 therapists said that they were working with a woman who was gang raped at the rave and was in no condition to talk to investigators or reporters. The trauma for sexual assault can be so heavy that sometimes survivors do not speak about it for years. Several rape counselors said, and let me just take a moment here and say, imagine that you're one of these people, that you were raped by terrorists. It would not be an easy thing to simply go on TV or talk to reporters. It is absolutely humiliating and devastating. So it is no wonder that there is a lack of people willing to come forward and speak about it. Many people are looking for the golden evidence of a woman who will testify about what happened to her, but don't look for that. Don't put this pressure on this woman, said Orit Solitzanu, ex-executive director of the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel. The corpses tell the story. The woman in the black dress. One of the last images of Ms. Abdush alive, captured by a security camera mounted on her front door, shows her leaving home with her husband, Nagi, at 2:30 a.m. on October 7th for the rave. He was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt. She was dressed in a short black dress, a black shawl tied around her waist, and combat boots. As she struts out, she takes a swig from a glass. Her brother-in-law remembers it was Red Bull and vodka and laughs. You gotta live life like it's your last moments. That was her motto, her sisters said. At daybreak, hundreds of terrorists closed in on the party from several different directions, blocking the highways leading out. The couple jumped into their Audi, dashing off a string of messages as they moved. We're on the border, Ms. Abdush wrote to her family. We're leaving. Explosions. Her husband made his own calls to his family, leaving a final audio message for his brother, Nissim, at 7:44 a.m. Take care of the kids, he said. I love you. Gunshots rang out, and the message stopped. That night, Ed and Wesley, a car mechanic, drove to the rave site with 3 friends and found Miss Abdush sprawled, half naked, on the road next to a burned car, about 9 miles north of the site. She did not see the body of her husband, Mr. Abdush. She saw other burned cars and other bodies and shot videos of several, hoping that they would help people to identify missing relatives. When she posted the video of the woman in the black dress on her Instagram story, she was deluged with messages. Hi, based on your description of the woman in the black dress, did she have blonde hair? One message read. Eden, the woman you described with the black dress, do you remember the color of her eyes? One message read, or another said. Some members of the Abdush family saw that video and another version of it filmed by one of Ms. Wesley's friends. They immediately suspected that the body was Miss Abdush. And based on the way her body was found, they feared that she might have been raped. But they kept alive a flicker of hope that somehow it wasn't true. The videos caught the eye of Israeli officials as well. Very quickly after October 7th, they began gathering evidence of atrocities. They included footage of Miss Abdush's body in a presentation made to foreign governments and media organizations. And as I've said, I have been able to view that footage, using Miss Abdush as a representation of the violence committed against women that day. A week after her body was found, 3 government social workers appeared at the gate of the family's home in Kiryat Ekron, a small town in central Israel. They broke the news that Ms. Abdush, 34, had been found dead. But the only document the family received was a 1-page form letter from Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, expressing his condolences and sending a hug. The body of Mr. Abdush, 35, was identified 2 days after his wife's. It was badly burned, and investigators determined who he was based on a DNA sample and his wedding ring. The couple had been together since they were teenagers. To the family, it seemed like only yesterday Mr. Abdush was heading off to work to fix water heaters, a bag of tools slung over his shoulder, and Ms. Abdush was cooking up mashed potatoes and schnitzel for their 2 sons, Eliav, 10, and Raphael, 7. The boys are now orphans. They were sleeping over an aunt's house the night their parents were killed. Ms. Abdush's mother and father have applied for permanent custody, and everyone is chipping in to help. Night after night, Ms. Abdush's mother, Eti Bracha, lies in bed with the boys as they drift off. A few weeks ago, she said that she tried to quietly leave their bedroom when the younger one stopped her. "Grandma," he said, "I want to ask you a question." "Honey," she said, "you can ask anything." "Grandma, how did Mom die?" And that's the end of the article. Please share this. Please share the article. This has to get out. What happened really happened. Goodbye.